Chapter 491. Why didn't Mary's son accompany her here for treatment? At that line of thought, Arissa's brows knitted together deeply as puzzlement gripped her. He's at the police station, Tim answered curtly. Benjamin swept his gaze over the boy before he gestured to Ethan about talking to him privately. Have you made all the arrangements over there? In response, Ethan nodded. Yes, everything is in place. He won't be released so easily. Benjamin nodded in approval, his alluring face cold and forbidding. Keep a close eye on him and don't allow him to get out. Understood, Mr. Graham, Ethan replied. He had made all the arrangements meticulously, so Raphael couldn't possibly get out of prison in the next few years. Meanwhile, Bradley merely eyed them and listened quietly without butting in. Don't tell me it was Mr. Graham who got Tim's uncle into prison. Arissa, on the other hand, was entirely ignorant about the situation. Since the person in question was Mary's son, she inquired in concern, why is he at the police station? However, Tim pursed his lips and kept mum. He instinctively didn't want her to know that Raphael picked on him. Seeing that her son wasn't saying anything, Arissa didn't pursue the matter any further. She glanced at Benjamin, sensing that he probably knew something. She then decided to ask him about it later. Shortly after, Mary came out after her examination. Tim hurried over to support her. How was it, Madam Mary? It was just a checkup, so it didn't hurt at all. Mary reassured. Upon hearing that, Tim breathed a sigh of relief. Sean then walked out of the examination room and whisked Mary away for other examinations. The whole group of people went along. Mary did a total of 5 different examinations before Sean allowed her to go back and rest. Benjamin, Ethan, and Bradley went with Sean to discuss Mary's condition while Arissa wheeled Mary back to the hospital room with the children. Where will you all be staying tonight, Issa? Mary was reluctant to have Arissa stay at the hospital since it was quite late then. They'll probably be staying at a hotel, but I'll be staying here tonight to take care of you, Madam Mary, Arissa answered. Hearing that, Mary waved a dismissive hand. No, it's okay, there are doctors and nurses here, so there isn't anything to do even if you stay. Go back and have a good rest. Besides, you've also just recovered. Don't tire yourself out again. It's not tiring to take care of you. Even if I leave, I'll worry. Also, Tim wants to stay to keep you company, so it's all the more vital that I stay, Arissa explained. Tim couldn't possibly leave with them and abandon Mary in the hospital all alone. Arissa really couldn't bring herself to do that. Thus, she decided to follow suit and keep Mary company as well. She had found her child at long last, so she yearned to have more interaction with him. Take Tim back with you to rest. Mary insisted. I'm not leaving, Grandma. I want to be with you. Tim clutched Mary's hand, staunchly refusing to leave. At that, Mary heaved a sigh. I'm not trying to give you the boot. It's just that you've kept me company for the entire day without getting any rest. Go back with them and have a good rest. Then, you can come back tomorrow to keep me company. She stroked his face with a look of anguish. Grandma, I can also rest in the hospital. I don't want to part with you. Tim remained adamant, and his eyes even turned red-rimmed. Glimpsing that, Mary caressed his head in distress. All right, we won't part then. You can stay at the hospital to keep me company. That was exactly what Arissa had expected, and she was glad to see her son showing Mary such tender love. She wheeled Mary back to the hospital room before going into the bathroom and getting a basin of warm water for Mary to wipe her face. I think I won't shower you today, Madam Mary. I'll give you a wipe. Mary wanted to do it herself, but Arissa didn't allow it. Verily, Mary was touched to see that she wasn't at all averse to her but exceedingly amicably instead. Thank you, Issa, don't mention it, Arissa replied with a smile. Then, she turned and said to Tim, Sweetheart, you should go and have a shower, too. I'll do it, Miss York. Tim wanted to take over the duty of wiping Mary's face, but Arissa pushed him away. I can manage. Go and take a shower, quick. You can't go to bed late as you are a kid. Mary waved a hand, signaling Tim to go and take a shower. Hurry up and go. Only then did Tim head to the bathroom. Subsequently, Gavin and the other children surrounded Arissa. Do you need any help, Mommy? Chapter 492. Arissa shook her head smilingly and shooed the children away so that Mary wouldn't feel awkward. No, it's fine. Go and sit at the side. You'll make Madam Mary feel embarrassed by looking on over here. When Mary heard that, she burst into laughter. See, I told you to let me do it myself. You're still weak, so it's better for me to do it. Here, turn over so that I can wipe your back. Arissa used to be a volunteer and would go to a retirement home to take care of the elderly. For that reason, she was very adept at taking care of Mary. Clocking her extreme patience without any hint of impatience, Mary smiled in relief. Thank you for going to such trouble for me, Isa. Don't say such things, Madam Mary. Or do you not like having me as a relative? Arissa teased. Of course not. I love having you as my relative. You're so kind-hearted. Mary was moved, and her eyes turned red-rimmed. Arissa changed a basin of water and continued wiping Mary down. She showed no sign of disdain. Instead, she was exceedingly meticulous, her movements gentle. If we're speaking of kind-heartedness, you're far above me, Madam Mary. If it weren't for you taking Tim home back then, he wouldn't have survived to this day. Thank you. It must have been difficult for you. Throughout the years, sheer gratefulness flooded her as she gazed at the white-haired lady. She was already so old then, yet she still took a child back to raise. It must have been difficult for her. We didn't find it difficult to raise Tim. Thanks to him, our days were filled with so much joy. However, he was forced to live a hard life with us. Seeing that Mary felt bad for Tim, Arissa comforted her, saying, it's a good thing for him to experience some hardships when he's young. Only then will he be even more mature and diligent when he grows up. Those experiences helped to shape him. At that, Mary nodded with a smile. Just then, Benjamin came in, only to see that Arissa was wiping Mary down. At once, he was caught between a rock and a hard place. When Arissa saw him, she waved a dismissive hand. Go out first. Benjamin closed the door and beckoned Ethan over. Did you not look for a caregiver? I did, but I haven't found a suitable one, Ethan reported honestly. Benjamin frowned at his answer. Hurry up and find someone. She can't possibly take care of Mary alone. Hey, someone is worried about Arissa. Ethan stole a peek at Benjamin and snickered. In turn, Benjamin shot him a glare. Hurry up and go. Understood. Ethan hastily went to look for a caregiver, and he even increased the pay. A moment later, Benjamin recalled that the children were all in the room, and his brows creased deeply. He phoned Gavin and ordered them to come out. Good Lord, that woman is another one. She's wiping Mary down, yet she allowed the kids to be there. Why did you call us out? Gavin stood in front of Benjamin. Sweeping his gaze over the 5 siblings, Benjamin instructed, in the future, all of you have to come out when Mary is getting a wipe. Do you understand me? The 5 children wore innocent expressions on their faces. We didn't peek. Even so, you've got to leave the room. Benjamin insisted. No matter how old Mary is, she's still a woman, so she'll still feel embarrassed. Hence, it's not appropriate for them to be present. Zachary curled his lips and retorted, Mommy didn't ask us to leave. Your mommy is heedless. Eyeing him, Benjamin added, do you follow your mommy's orders to the letter? Of course. Zachary puffed his chest out proudly. Benjamin's lips pressed into a thin line. He took them over to the bench at the side and sat down. Where's Tim? He has gone to take a shower. Gavin answered. Benjamin nodded in acknowledgement. Later, all of you go back to the hotel with your mommy to get some rest. I'll stay here, but Mommy just told Madam Mary that she's going to stay here overnight. Gavin interjected. I'll talk to her in a while. Honestly speaking, Benjamin didn't want Arissa to stay. She had just recovered, so her body might not be able to take it if she were to stay up all night to take care of Mary. When Arissa had finished wiping Mary, Tim had also finished showering and came out. Thus, she carried the dirty water over to get rid of it. The instant she saw that her son had washed the clothes he was wearing, she was stunned for a moment. At the same time, she felt sorry to see him so independent at such a young age. True enough, Children raised in destitution or mature beyond their age. Chapter 493. It's time you go back, Miss York. I'll wash Grandma's clothes. Tim went to the bathroom door, wanting to take over the chore of washing Mary's clothes. I'm not leaving. I'll be staying to keep you both company tonight. Also, I'll wash Madame Mary's clothes. You go out and keep her company instead, Arissa replied smilingly. Tim bit his bottom lip, not quite sure what to say upon seeing that she was still washing the clothes. Arissa turned her head slightly and looked at him. What do you want to say to me? As his eyes met her earnest gaze, Tim shook his head. Sweetheart, hurry up and go to bed. Kids have to sleep early to grow tall and strong. I'll also rest when I'm done with all this, Arissa urged gently so that he didn't have to waste his time here with her. Come here, Tim, I've got something to say to you. Hearing Mary's holler from the bathroom, Arissa leaned out and interjected, Why don't you put that on the back burner first, Madame Mary? It's late now. She was worried that it would affect Tim's sleep, so she felt that it was better for them to talk another day. Mary glanced at her. On second thought, she also felt that it would be better to talk sometime later. At that precise moment, Benjamin came in with the children. It's late, so go back and rest. Mary needs to rest, too, he said to Arissa. With her eyes pinned on him, Arissa stated, I'm staying here tonight. All at once, a frown marred Benjamin's countenance. He gestured for her to step out. Seeing that he had gone out, Arissa reckoned that he might want to say something to her, so she washed the foam off her hands before stepping out as well. What do you want to say to me? Take the children back to rest. I'll stay here tonight, so don't worry. Benjamin stared at her fixedly. Meanwhile, Arissa looked the man up and down. You haven't rested for a day and a night, no. Benjamin was busy searching for their child last night before rushing back to Delmore during the day, so he hadn't had any rest. At her remark, Benjamin arched an eyebrow and stepped closer to her, the gap between them so negligible that she could smell the alluring smell of him. Her heartbeat started racing. How did you know that? Meeting the man's ebony eyes, Arissa swallowed, her gaze shifty. She stole a peek at Benjamin's handsome countenance. Benjamin leaned over, his gaze scorching. Arissa's face flushed bright red. Didn't you say that you were searching for our child last night? Then, it goes without saying that you didn't sleep. Benjamin continued staring at her intently, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly. Well, she's still not admitting to it, huh? You stayed up late as well last night. What were you doing? Snorting softly, Arissa fibbed. I was also searching for our son. Benjamin sniggered, causing embarrassment to deluge Arissa. Were you not following me? Benjamin lifted her chin, his gaze dark as night. At his question, Arissa choked. Oh God, he knows. I was following my son's leads, not you. Quirking an eyebrow, Benjamin pinched her face with his long and slender fingers. Take the children back to rest. Arissa cast a glance at him, and asserted, I want to stay and keep Tim company. There's no rush. I'll talk to him. Are you not going to bother about Gavin and the rest anymore? Benjamin's brows furrowed. Conversely, Arissa was startled. After coming over, all her attention was on Tim, so she neglected her other 5 children. They've got you to watch over them, haven't they? Benjamin's attitude abruptly turned hard. Go back and rest. Or do you want me to have the bodyguards escort you? Arissa was rendered speechless. You didn't sleep either, but I slept the day away. My body can take it even if I don't sleep. For a few days and nights. Can you do the same? Benjamin harumphed. At that, Arissa pursed her lips. Go back and have a good sleep. Don't have the kids worry about you. Benjamin's voice had gentled slightly then. Glancing at him, Arissa relented. All right, then. I'll go back. However, I've got to wash Madame Mary's clothes first. Benjamin's brows creased deeply once more. The caregiver will be coming over in a while, so you don't need to do that anymore. You hired a caregiver. Arissa didn't expect him to be so thoughtful that he even thought of hiring a caregiver for Mary. Chapter 494. Yup, Ethan said the caregiver will be here in a while. Just leave the unwashed clothes, and she'll handle it when she arrives, Benjamin replied casually. Oh well, I can finish it before leaving. When Arissa went in and saw that all her children were there, contentment suffused her. She didn't feel the least bit tired. Hurry up and go back to rest, Issa. Just leave the clothes first. I'll just wash them tomorrow. Ultimately, Mary felt bad for troubling her. I'm about done, Madam Mary. It'll just take a few minutes more. Do rest first. Arissa flashed her a smile before going into the washroom and washing the clothes. Then, she hung them up to dry. Only after doing all that did she take her leave and said goodbye to Mary. Madam Mary, I'm going back to rest. If there's anything you need at night, just tell Benjamin. All right, don't worry about me anymore. Hurry up and go back to rest. I'll also be sleeping in a while, so I won't be needing anything. Truth be told, Mary was rather exhausted then. Nodding, Arissa walked over to Tim and crouched beside him. Sweetheart, come back with me to rest, okay? Alas, Tim shook his head and dashed over to Mary. Giving a soft sigh, Arissa smiled and reassured gently, don't be afraid. I won't take you away. I'll be leaving. Keep Madam Mary company tonight and rest well. Tim stared at her, not quite sure whether she was going back to Delmore or someplace else. I'm leaving, sweetheart. I'll be back tomorrow. Bye. Arissa bid her son farewell in a gentle voice before she brought Gavin and the others back. Bye, Tim. Rest well. We'll be back tomorrow to play with you. Bye, Tim. See you tomorrow. The 5 children bid Tim and Mary goodbye before they left with Arissa. Rest first, Benjamin said before he saw Arissa and the children out. When Arissa saw that Bradley was still there, she called out, follow us back to rest, Bradley. Benjamin will be handling things here. Studying them, Bradley nodded in agreement. Okay. At that turn of events, Benjamin swept his gaze over the man. Benjamin, keep an eye on their condition since you're staying. Phone me if there's anything, Arissa reminded. In response, Benjamin nodded. Don't worry, I'll handle everything perfectly. When they arrived downstairs, he carried the children into the car. Go to bed earlier when you all get back. Arissa nodded. She then bent down to climb into the car when she suddenly remembered something. She pulled the man to the side. Why is Tim's uncle at the police station? Do you know the reason? At her question, Benjamin's gaze flickered. Don't ask so many questions. Go back and rest, quick. Arissa eyed him with a frown. Do you think I won't investigate the matter if you refuse to tell me? Benjamin's brows furrowed, and he glowered at her. He committed domestic violence, so Tim lodged a police report and had him arrested. Never having expected such a reason, Arissa was shocked to the core. Who was the victim? She demanded frantically. Was it Madam Mary or my son? Benjamin's expression turned icy cold. Both weren't spared. All at once, Arissa's brows knitted deeply together, and her heart twisted in agony. So, my child grew up in such an environment. Deep-seated guilt and anguish inundated her. This is all on me for not remembering that I still had another child. If only I had returned earlier. Then, I would have found him earlier, and he wouldn't have had to suffer as much. Upon seeing that she was blaming herself again, Benjamin stroked her hair. Stop blaming yourself. Go back earlier. Arissa looked at him, upon which the man jutted his chin in the direction of the car, reminding her that the children were all waiting for her. Composing herself, Arissa urged, remember to rest as well at the hospital. Will do. Benjamin flashed her a smile. Arissa gave him a final look before she rolled around to get into the car. She didn't notice that Benjamin took her hand and fell right onto the man. Wrapping an arm around her waist, Benjamin kissed her passionately. After that, he pinched her face and declared domineeringly, sleep tight when you go back. Don't let your mind wander. Arissa blushed to the tip of her ears, her cheeks flaming hotly. Chapter 495. Okay. Arissa swiftly got into the car, only to grow even more embarrassed when she was greeted by 5 pairs of eyes. Tasked with driving them back to the hotel, Ethan turned back and reminded Arissa, sit tight, Miss York. We're off now. Shifting her gaze to him, Arissa nodded. When she caught sight of him stifling a smile, she gave a light cough and turned to gaze out the window. Benjamin's tall and robust figure was right outside, making her heart skip a beat. Miss York, there are resting lounges in the hospital, so you don't have to worry that Mr. Graham has no place to rest. As Ethan's voice drifted over from the front, mortification swept over Arissa. I see, she murmured. Meanwhile, the 5 children looked at each other with amusement in their eyes. Mommy is embarrassed, Jasper whispered. Mommy's face is so red. Oliver chimed in. Mommy's ears are also red, Jessie added. Although they were all talking in hushed tones, Arissa could still hear them loud and clear. She glanced over her shoulder and swept her gaze over them all. The 5 children were all grinning from ear to ear. She reached out and ruffled their hair. What's so funny? All 5 of them promptly burst into giggles. Mommy, your relationship with Mr. Graham is developing really rapidly. Jasper was a quick-witted one, and he smiled suggestively. At that, the corners of Arissa's mouth twitched. Are you guys sleepy? The 5 little children shook their heads. Jessie then leaned over and hugged her. Are you sleepy, Mommy? Nope. After all, she had slept a lot that day. Subsequently, she looked at her 5 children and commented, you all didn't even tell me anything before coming over here. All 5 children giggled. Mommy, it was Daddy who asked us to come over. He was with you then, so we thought you knew about it. Gavin admitted. Exactly, but we never thought that you were sick. Mr. Graham kept us in the dark and didn't breathe a word about it to us. If we'd known that you were sick, we wouldn't have come here so quickly. Zachary groused. Snorting, Arissa leaned back against the seat and threw them all a sidelong glance. What did you say to Tim? Mommy, Tim definitely knows that you're his mother. Daddy told him about it earlier. We also told him that we were his brothers, Gavin muttered, afraid that she would be angry. He cautiously stole a peek at her, only continuing upon seeing that she wasn't in high dudgeon. However, we didn't tell him how he got separated from us back then. Stroking his head, Arissa complimented in a gentle voice, you did great, sweetheart. Zachary tilted his head and gazed at her. Mommy, we should tell him the reason as soon as possible. Otherwise, his misunderstanding toward you will persist. Did he say anything to you all? Arissa asked the children. In response, all 5 of them shook their heads. He didn't say anything, but we could sense that he harbors some misunderstanding. Oliver stated confidently, nudging his glasses. Mommy, he must have misunderstood that we didn't want him and abandoned him. Jessie voiced her sentiments as well. The moment Arissa heard that, her heart jolted. She could also surmise all that, but when it came from her children, her heart felt exceedingly heavy. I know, she couldn't bring herself to explain things to Tim, nor did she know whether he would believe it after learning about the truth. She heaved a sigh. Taking her hand, Jasper coaxed, don't worry, Mommy. He'll understand that you didn't abandon him on purpose after he has told the truth. Arissa nodded. Your daddy said he'd talk to him. Speaking of that, she was a tad worried that Benjamin might scare Tim. She hurriedly phoned the man. The ringing tone only rang for a second before the call was answered. Hello, Benjamin, watch your tone when you speak to Tim. Don't scare him. The man on the other end of the phone chuckled. He's not as fragile as you think. At his remark, Arissa was taken aback for a moment. But then, perhaps he's not as strong as he thinks either. Chapter 496. Don't worry about that. Have you reached the hotel? Benjamin's deep voice rang out from the other end of the phone. Arissa glanced out the car window, only to see that they were still on the way. Nope. All right, then. I'll be hanging up if there's nothing else. Pausing for a second, Benjamin then added, I've got a conference call. Ah, I see. With that, Arissa had no choice but to hang up. It was only about 10 minutes later that they arrived at the hotel. A room was already reserved for them, and Ethan led them up to the suite. Rest earlier, Miss York. Arissa nodded. You've also worked very hard, so rest earlier. Ethan flashed her a smile. Sure, he still had to return to the hospital, but he only left after bidding the 5 children farewell. Bradley, you've also worked hard, so go and rest. Arissa said to Bradley as well. Okay, Bradley nodded in agreement. Oh yes, Bradley, since we've found Tim, tell the rest that they can stop searching, Arissa prompted. Hearing that, Bradley chuckled. I already did that. Arissa nodded in approval and urged, "Go and rest, quick. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it tomorrow." "Good night," Bradley said to them all. "Good night, Mr. Hinton." The 5 children replied, "Hurry up and go take a shower." Arissa ordered the children after closing the door. The 5 children glanced at her and suggested, "Mommy, you go first. We'll shower after you're done." Chortling, Arissa remarked, "There are 2 bathrooms, so let's shower at the same time." The 5 children studied their surroundings, only to discover that there was also a bathroom outside. "In that case, we'll use the bathroom outside while you shower in the ensuite bathroom, Mommy." "Okay." Arissa followed the children to the bathroom and helped them to adjust the water temperature before Ash headed to the bathroom in the master bedroom for a shower. Meanwhile, Benjamin waited until Mary was asleep before he asked Tim to step out with him. Tim tucked the covers around Mary before he whirled around and exited the room. "You asked for me, Mr. Graham." Tim stared at Benjamin, neither happy nor angry, his voice placid. Benjamin swept his gaze over him and patted him on the head. Then, he led him to the adjacent room by the shoulders. "Let's talk in the adjacent room." Eyeing the man, Tim followed him to the adjacent room with apprehension building within him. "I wonder what he wants to say to me." Benjamin went to the couch and sat down. Seeing that Tim was a touch nervous, he scooped the ladder up to sit next to him. "Have some food. Ethan brought supper when he returned a while ago." Benjamin took a piece of chicken wing for Tim. Swallowing, Tim shook his head. "I'm not hungry." Benjamin stared at him for a long while before asking, "Do you want me to feed you?" While saying that, he brought it right to Tim's mouth. Stunned, Tim could only take it from the man. He lowered his head and munched on the chicken wing. It was exceedingly fragrant and delicious. As he recalled Mary in the adjacent room, his appetite faded, for he felt guilty as though he was eating behind her back. Benjamin stroked his head and inquired, "Is it good?" Tim pursed his lips. After a while, he nodded honestly. "Yeah." "Then, why aren't you eating any more?" Benjamin quirked an eyebrow. Stealing a glance at the man, Tim dipped his head. "Can I keep some for Grandma?" Benjamin's heart jolted, and a myriad of feelings brewed within him. "It won't taste nice when it's cool, so you eat it. When your grandma wakes up tomorrow, I'll have someone buy it for her." Tim bit his lip before glancing at the chicken wing in his hand. At the end of the day, he was still a child, so he was no match for the temptation of food. "Thank you, Mr. Graham." At his address, Benjamin's gaze flickered imperceptibly. "Well, I'm afraid that he won't change his address of me so easily." The look in his eyes was tender as he watched the little boy munch on the chicken wing. After taking a few bites, Tim turned and looked at the man. "There is another one, Mr. Graham." Benjamin reclined and leaned back against the couch. "I don't like it. You can finish everything later, I've got something to tell you." Upon hearing that, Tim frowned. "What do you want to say to me, Mr. Graham?" Chapter 497. Benjamin swept his gaze over Tim. "We'll talk when you're done eating." Tim hesitated for a moment before he continued eating. As Benjamin crossed his legs, he pinned his gaze on the little boy and scrutinized him. Sensing the man's gaze, Tim turned and looked over. The instant he met the man's eyes, he lowered his head once more. Benjamin then averted his gaze and toyed with his phone, wondering whether Arissa was asleep. At the hotel, Arissa had just finished showering and was planning to tuck the children into bed when she heard Jess's stomach growling. "Are you hungry?" She pinched the little girl's cheeks indulgently. In response, Jessie nodded. "Yup, I'm hungry, Mommy. Wait for a while, I'll order some food up." Arissa then phoned the suite's housekeeper and ordered some food to be delivered to the room. The 5 children were ecstatic, cheering, "Yay! We're having supper." Initially, they were quite happy. Then, they remembered Tim at the hospital and felt a touch guilty. "Tim doesn't get to eat at the hospital," Jasper lamented with a sigh. "We can ask the bodyguards to send some food over," Gavin suggested. At the sight of the children's concern for Tim, Arissa was very much gratified. "Phone your daddy and have him buy some food nearby. That'll be quicker." By the time the bodyguards arrive with food, Tim might have gone to bed. Hearing that, the 5 children exchanged glances. Zachary and the others didn't want to make the call, so they all swung their gazes at Gavin. Gavin eyed them before glancing at Arissa. "Why don't you do it, Mommy? When we parted ways at the hospital, Daddy and Mommy kissed." Thus, if Mommy were to call Daddy now, not only would it improve their relationship, but Daddy would also agree undoubtedly. He knew that Benjamin wasn't in the habit of having supper, so the man might not necessarily buy supper for Tim if he were to make the call, as he felt that it wasn't healthy to eat before going to bed at night. Arissa looked at the children and shook her head with a smile. "Okay, I'll make the call, then." While saying that, she phoned Benjamin. The ringing tone didn't even ring before the man's voice drifted into her ears. "Yes." The baritone voice that traveled through the phone strummed her eardrums, startling her. Thinking that she might have been hearing things, she took the phone away from her ear. Only when she saw that the call was connected did she place it back against her ear. "Say something, Arissa." Puzzlement inundated Arissa. "Why were you so quick to answer the call?" Benjamin was silent for a minute before admitting, "The phone was in my hand when I saw an incoming call from you." At that turn of events, amusement flooded Arissa. Tim might be hungry at this time, so buy him some food near the hospital before he goes to bed. When she was in the hospital earlier, she forgot all about that. Children had better digestion, so they got hungry easily. Also, buy him some milk. As Benjamin listened to her orders, his gaze alighted on Tim, who was eating quietly. "He's about to be full." Arissa was stunned for a while before understanding dawned upon her. "You bought him food. Ethan brought it when he came over just now," Benjamin explained. Surprise swamped Arissa that Ethan still went to the hospital despite the late hour. "All right, then. Rest earlier when you both finish eating. Don't sleep too late. If you and the children are hungry, order some food," Benjamin uttered in concern. "I've done so, and we're now waiting for the food." "Okay," Benjamin murmured. After a moment's hesitation, Arissa requested, "Snap a photo of Tim eating and send it to me." Following that, Benjamin's chuckle drifted into her ear. "Do you not believe me?" Giving a cough, Arissa clarified. "I only want to have a look at him. It has nothing to do with believing you." "Wait a moment." Benjamin then hung up the phone. Shortly after, Arissa received a picture of Tim's profile as he ate. With affection clear on her face, she caressed his image on the picture. The 5 children leaned over as well. "It looks delicious. Tim is having chicken wings," Jessie exclaimed. She then swallowed. Seeing that, Arissa chuckled. "Do you want to have chicken wings?" Chapter 498. Jessie nodded, indicating that she indeed wanted to have chicken wings. Arissa caressed her head. "We'll see whether there are any later. If there aren't any, we'll order again." Yay! Jessie was over the moon. In no time, the doorbell rang. Zachary sprinted over to open the door. He peeked through the peephole and only opened the door when he ascertained that it was a server from the hotel. Clocking his wariness, Gavin reminded, "There are bodyguards outside." "Hee, I'm used to it." Zachary threw him a look before opening the door and allowing the server to enter. "Hello, miss. Are there chicken wings?" "Yes." The suite's housekeeper recited the menu to them while carrying the food to the dining table. "Mommy, there are chicken wings. Quick, come and eat." The 5 children were all in 7th heaven at the sight of the food. They all called Arissa over. Hence, Arissa walked over. When she saw the table full of food for supper, she thanked the housekeeper. Only when the housekeeper had left did she start feasting with the children. "This is for you, Gavin," Zachary offered. "Don't take mine, Oliver," Jasper chided. "I didn't take yours. Isn't yours right there on your plate?" Oliver countered. "Hee, I took it." Jessie interjected. "Everyone, stop taking all the food. Mommy hasn't eaten yet. We'll order more if there isn't enough," Gavin asserted. As Arissa watched her children playing around, joy overfilled her, and she wore an expression of indulgence on her face. "Just eat everything if you all like it. I will just eat a bit. If only Tim is here with us. I wonder what he likes to eat." At that thought, Arissa queried, "Sweethearts, did you all have dinner with Tim?" "Yup, we ate with him at the hospital. Mr. Frank, Mr. Hinton, and Uncle Sean brought food back for us after they ate outside," Gavin answered. Arissa nodded in acknowledgement, her gaze fixated on the 5 children. Then, did you all notice what he likes to eat? At once, anguish showed on the faces of all 5 children. He likes to eat meat, Zachary replied in a whisper. As soon as Arissa glimpsed their distressed expressions, she promptly guessed the reason. Tim seldom got to eat meat, so he naturally loved it. Is there anything else? Mommy, he also likes to eat prawns. He even ate the shells. Jessie spoke while she ate, causing food to spew out of her mouth. Jasper hurriedly dodged in disgust. Don't talk while you're eating, Jessie. Look, you're spewing food everywhere. Immediately, Jessie flashed him an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, it wasn't deliberate. The instant she put on her coquettish act, Jasper crumbled. Oh well, I forgive you. Here, this is for you. Jasper placed the entire plate of skewers contaminated by her saliva before her. Jessie happily stuck her tongue out. Meanwhile, Arissa smiled at their antics. When did you all eat? Did you all not have your fill during dinner, or did you all eat too early that you're so hungry now? We had dinner around 6 or 7 o'clock. Zachary glanced at his mother. Chuckling, Arissa replied, I also ate around that hour. Hurry up and eat. When you're done, go and brush your teeth before going to bed. It's almost midnight now. That was the latest the children ever went to bed, so she rushed them. Got it, Mommy. All 5 children didn't tarry either as they continued eating at lightning speed. Then, they all dashed to the bathroom to brush their teeth before lying in bed. Good night, Mommy, Gavin greeted. Good night, Mommy, Zachary seconded. Good night, Mommy, Oliver went next. Good night, Mommy, Jasper followed. Good night, Mommy, Jessie went last. Good night, sweethearts, Arissa replied gently, leaning down and kissing them on the forehead. The children could no longer battle their drowsiness at that hour and promptly fell asleep after closing their eyes. Arissa pulled the covers over them and caressed their faces while sitting on the edge of the bed. Truly, she was glad that they were all very sensible and didn't blame her for neglecting them that day. She only returned to the master bedroom to rest when they were deep in slumber. Chapter 499. In the hospital, Tim wiped his mouth after finishing his supper. Turning to face Benjamin, he gathered the courage to ask, Mr. Graham, what do you want to tell me? Glancing at him, Benjamin handed him the milk made from the milk powder Ethan had just bought. Drink this. Upon receiving it, Tim felt the milk tasted strange after the first mouthful. When he saw how Tim grimaced at the drink, Benjamin cracked a slight smile. I don't like it either. Nevertheless, it's good for you. So, drink up. After giving Benjamin a look, Tim returned his gaze to the glass of milk. It would be a waste if I don't finish it. In the end, he pinched his nose and gulped down the milk as if he was drinking medicine. With a gentle gaze, Benjamin used a paper towel to wipe his son's mouth. After that, he began to explain what happened. Have you been wondering why Gavin is staying with us, while you're out there all alone? Lowering his gaze, Tim clenched his pants as he felt a squeeze in his heart. When he saw the look on Tim's face, Benjamin tousled the latter's hair sympathetically. I'm your daddy, while Arissa is your mommy. Benjamin repeated their identities to Tim. Furthermore, your mommy loves you a lot. Tim bit his lip in response. Even though he didn't say a word, Benjamin could sense the sorrow welling up inside him. Tim, actually, we only found out about your existence a few days ago. In other words, we have no idea you existed before that. Feeling doubtful, Tim looked at Benjamin in disbelief. How is that possible? I'm sure you must have abandoned me because you didn't like me. As Benjamin detected the disheartened look in Tim's eyes, he felt his heart tighten. No wonder Arissa broke down in front of him. Even I can feel my nose burn. Suppressing the lump in his throat, Benjamin continued to explain, we like you a lot, and no one wants to abandon you. The one who dumped you wasn't mommy, so don't blame or resent her for it. If anything, you should blame me. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be suffering out there for so many years. I am the one who has failed you. Tim blinked his eyes. It wasn't because they didn't want me or mommy abandoned me. Benjamin sighed. Your mommy was the one who had it the worst. Back when she was pregnant, someone sabotaged her by locking her up in a secluded place, causing her to suffer alone with no hope of rescue. Thinking back to how Arissa was imprisoned in darkness, Benjamin couldn't help but feel outraged and heartache at the same time. The perpetrator captured Mommy because she wanted to marry me by using you. After Mommy gave birth to you, she took you and Gavin away. During that time, she was barely conscious. Moreover, she was subsequently dealt more harm and thrown into an area where wild beasts roamed. She, along with Zachary, Oliver, Jasper, and Jesse almost lost their lives. The injury in her head also resulted in memory loss. Hence, she couldn't remember that she had given birth to 6 babies. After Gavin and you were taken away, only Gavin was returned, as that woman hid your existence from us. It wasn't until your mommy returned to search for Gavin that the past was exposed. When that woman tried to harm them again, she was arrested by the police. Subsequently, she used you to threaten Mommy by telling her that you were still in her hands. Once your mommy knew about it, she was devastated and fainted from the shock. In order to find you, she wandered the streets aimlessly, thinking that every homeless child could be you. If you turned out to be among them, she would blame herself for life. All this while, she lived in constant fear of you being sold off or losing your life. Yesterday, she was just feeling better but stayed up the entire night looking for you. However, she fainted again this morning after learning that you had been abandoned and might never be found. Chapter 500. After giving Tim a look, Benjamin's tone was both grim and filled with pain. When I called her to tell her that you were alive, she didn't believe it. Instead, she headed to see the lawyer, hoping to bring forward the court's verdict over the perpetrator. Unfortunately, she fainted the moment she arrived at the lawyer's office. That aside, Gavin grew up with me, while Zachary, Oliver, Jasper, and Jesse were raised by your mommy overseas and only came back recently. Prior to that, we didn't know each other at all. Tim, the reason I'm telling you all this is so that you won't have any misconceptions about your mommy. Not only did she not forget you, but she was also extremely distraught when she couldn't find you. In fact, she was filled with self-blame, pain, and remorse all this while. It wasn't a case of her not wanting you at all. You have to know that she loves all of you very much. When Tim kept his head lowered, Benjamin was filled with pity for him. Tim, Mommy's sickness isn't entirely because of you. It was because she didn't manage to recover properly after giving birth to the 6 of you. Moreover, she had suffered injuries that weakened her body further. Thus, you shouldn't blame yourself, for it will just make your mommy feel bad, Benjamin reassured him while tousling his hair. With a twitch of his eyelashes, Tim's eyes began to grow misty. It turns out that Mommy didn't abandon me. It was a villain who forcefully took me away instead. Letting out a sniffle, Tim clenched his trousers with his fists. Subsequently, Benjamin gave him a hug and patted him on his back. I'm the one who failed all of you. If I had investigated the matter thoroughly back then, all of you wouldn't have to suffer. Sprawled in Benjamin's arms, Tim was trying to hold back his tears. However, Benjamin's apology tipped him over his threshold. Going forward, Mommy and I will definitely protect you. We will not let history repeat itself. Boo-hoo, Tim bawled uncontrollably. Benjamin gave Tim the space to vent his frustrations as he patted the latter sympathetically on the back. Listening to Tim's long repressed sobs, Benjamin could feel his heart sink. Fortunately, I'm the one that's explaining it to him. Or else, Arissa would be just as devastated as he is. Finally, Tim cried himself to sleep in Benjamin's arms. When he noticed that Tim had stopped moving, Benjamin thought the latter had fainted from crying and quickly called for Sean to come in. Upon hearing Benjamin's frantic shout, Sean burst in at once. What is it? Quick, check if he has fainted. Carrying Tim carefully in his arms, Benjamin furrowed his brows in concern. After laying Tim down on the bed to examine him, Sean quipped with a smile, he's just sleeping. Sleeping. Benjamin frowned as he gave Sean a doubtful look. Sean was immediately annoyed. He really is sleeping. If you don't believe me, you can get another doctor to confirm. Pursing his lips, he watched Tim earnestly. He's asleep. Ethan. Mr. Graham. Ethan looked at Benjamin as he awaited further instructions. Call for the doctor. The moment the words left Benjamin's mouth, Sean was outraged. Amused by what happened, Ethan went off to get a doctor just to put Benjamin's mind at ease. Meanwhile, Sean continued to breathe heavily by the side. Calm down, calm down. This guy only remembers that I'm an amazing doctor when he needs me. But since he's just overly concerned for his children, I won't hold it against him. It wasn't until the doctor arrived and confirmed that Tim was asleep that Benjamin's mind was put at ease. If he has fallen sick, Arissa would definitely blame me for it. Mr. Graham, he's just exhausted. All he needs is enough sleep to rejuvenate himself. Sitting by the bed, Benjamin tucked Tim in and wiped the tears off his eyelashes. Given how feeble he was, Tim looked as if he was about to be swallowed by the bed. It was a sight that jolted Benjamin. We really need to take good care of him. As Sean instructed the doctor to leave the room, he, too, followed suit to mollify his own bruised ego.